My mom said I had 48 hours to give my sister my apartment or she'd destroy my reputation, so I built a manipulation file that terrified her. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Posted by u/document everything 26, original post. I need to share this story because I'm still processing how everything unfolded, and honestly, I need to document this somewhere beyond my personal files. For context, I'm James, 26M, and I work as a software engineer for a major tech company in downtown Seattle. After years of careful saving, strategic job hopping, and grinding through 60-hour work weeks, I finally secured my dream apartment 6 months ago, a 2-bedroom unit on the 15th floor of a luxury building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The rent isn't cheap at $3,200 a month, but I've worked incredibly hard to afford this lifestyle. This apartment represents everything I've accomplished since graduating college with $40,000 in student loans and eating ramen for 2 years straight. My younger sister Ashley, 19F, moved to the city 3 months ago for college, University of Washington, studying communications. Against my advice and offers to help her find something suitable, she insisted on finding her own place rather than staying in dorms, claiming she needed independence and the real Seattle experience. She ended up signing a lease for a studio apartment in a rougher part of town, $800 a month, ground floor, bars on the windows, right next to a check-cashing place and a liquor store. The neighborhood isn't terrible during the day, but I'll admit it gets sketchy after dark. I'd warned her about the area, even drove her through it at different times of day, but she said I was being overprotective and classist. 2 weeks ago, my mother Patricia, 52F, called me with what she presented as a simple solution to Ashley's housing situation. She didn't ease into it or ask how I was doing. She didn't even pretend to care about my recent promotion or the presentation I'd mentioned giving to the board. She simply announced that I would be switching apartments with Ashley. "It's the only logical solution," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of assumed authority I'd known since childhood. "You're a man. You can handle living in a tougher neighborhood. Ashley needs somewhere safe. You have 2 bedrooms you don't even use." I sat in my living room, watching the sunset paint the water golden, the fairies crossing the sound like toys in a bathtub, and felt my jaw clench. "Mom, that's not happening. I worked for years to afford this place. I signed a lease. I have furniture that won't even fit in Ashley's studio. Family comes first, James. I can't believe you're being so selfish. What if something happens to her? How would you live with yourself?" The conversation deteriorated from there. She employed every manipulation tactic in her arsenal: guilt about Ashley's safety, reminders of everything she'd done for me growing up, conveniently forgetting that I'd paid her back for college help with interest, accusations of not caring about family, comparisons to my cousins who would never let their siblings suffer. When I remained firm, she switched to threats. She'd tell the extended family I was letting my sister live in danger. She'd make sure everyone at her church knew what kind of brother I was. She'd post on Facebook about children who abandon family values the moment they achieve success. "You do what you feel you need to do, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "But I'm not giving up my apartment." I ended the call, but it was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning of what would become a 3-week psychological warfare campaign. The next morning, Ashley texted me. Her message was long and dramatic, a stark departure from her usual emoji-filled brief messages. She detailed how scared she was in her apartment, how she could hear gunshots at night, doubtful, how a man had followed her to her door, concerning if true, but the timing was suspicious, how she found needles in the hallway, possible but unverified. She ended with, "Mom says you have room for me, but you'd rather see me in danger than share. I guess I know where I stand with you." I knew immediately that our mother had orchestrated this. Ashley had been perfectly happy with her apartment in our conversations just days before. She'd even bragged about her authentic urban experience on Instagram, posting pictures of the gritty reality of city living with hashtags like #UrbanExplorer and #RealSeattle. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. My Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, cousins Michael and Jennifer, my mother's sister Barbara from Portland, even my grandfather Thomas who barely knew how to text, all suddenly concerned about Ashley's living situation and disappointed in my lack of family values. The messages were remarkably similar in tone and talking points, as if someone had provided a script. "Heard about Ashley's dangerous situation. Can't believe you won't help your sister. Family should come first. Your mother is worried sick. What would your late grandmother think?" That last one particularly stung. My grandmother Elizabeth had passed 2 years ago, and invoking her memory was a low blow, even for my mother. I realized then that my mother had weaponized the entire family against me. She'd probably spent hours on the phone, crafting her narrative, assigning roles in her orchestrated drama. But here's where things get interesting, and where my professional background became unexpectedly relevant. I've worked in tech long enough to understand the power of documentation, data patterns, and evidence-based decision-making. If my family wanted to play games, I was going to play to win, and I was going to use every tool at my disposal. I started recording everything. Update 1. The evidence-gathering phase. I spent the next 3 days methodically documenting every interaction with the obsessive attention to detail that had made me successful in debugging complex code. I installed a call recording app, legal in Washington with single-party consent. I'd verified this 3 times with different sources, screenshot every text message with full metadata preserved, saved every voicemail in multiple formats, and created a complex spreadsheet tracking the timeline of communications, noting patterns and inconsistencies. But I didn't stop there. I also did something else. I reached out to Ashley's neighbors through the building's Facebook group under the pretense of being a concerned brother wanting to verify the safety situation. I was careful with my approach, introducing myself genuinely and explaining that I wanted to understand the real situation to best help my sister. What I learned was illuminating. According to multiple residents, the building was actually quite safe. They had security cameras installed 3 months ago, a doorman until 10 p.m., something Ashley had never mentioned, and the gunshots Ashley mentioned were likely fireworks from a nearby park where kids played basketball and celebrated birthdays. One neighbor, an older woman named Carol who'd lived there for 15 years, even mentioned seeing Ashley laughing with friends in the courtyard just the night before, clearly not terrified. She said Ashley often had friends over and seemed to love showing off her bohemian lifestyle to her college classmates. Another neighbor, Brian, mentioned that Ashley had thrown a party 2 weeks ago that went until 2 a.m., hardly the behavior of someone living in fear. He wasn't complaining, just noting that she seemed very comfortable in the building. Armed with this information, I decided to test a theory. I called Ashley and recorded the conversation, making sure my recording app was functioning properly first. "Hey Ash, I've been thinking about your situation. Before we discuss any apartment changes, I want to understand exactly what's happening. Can you tell me about these safety issues? I want specific incidents, dates, times. I'm trying to build a case here." Ashley launched into a dramatic retelling, but I noticed something. She kept pausing, as if checking notes. I could hear papers rustling, the distinctive sound of pages being turned. "Are you reading something?" I asked innocently. "What?" "No, I'm just looking at my homework. I'm multitasking." "Ashley, you told me yesterday you'd finished all your assignments for the week. What homework?" A pause. "I meant next week stuff." "Ashley, are you alone right now?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes, of course." That's when I heard it, our mother's voice in the background, whispered but distinct. "Tell him about the man following you. Make it sound scarier." "Actually, Mom's there, isn't she?" I said calmly. "No. I mean, she just stopped by." At 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. She lives 45 minutes away. She was in the neighborhood. I hung up and immediately called my mother's cell. It rang once before going to voicemail. I called Ashley back, straight to voicemail. They were coordinating, probably discussing their next move. I made notes of all of this, including timestamps and the duration of silenced phones. Over the next week, the pressure campaign intensified dramatically. My mother called my employer, claiming there was a family emergency and I needed to be reached immediately. This backfired spectacularly when my manager, concerned, pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay. I had to explain the situation, which was professionally embarrassing. She showed up at my apartment building 3 times, but was turned away by the concierge, thank God for security, worth every penny of that high rent. On the 3rd attempt, she made such a scene that the building manager had to threaten to call the police. She even contacted my ex-girlfriend Lisa on Facebook, trying to recruit her to the cause. Lisa, to her credit, immediately screenshot the messages and sent them to me with a "Your mom is crazy" note. The messages to Lisa were particularly manipulative, claiming I was letting pride endanger family, and asking if Lisa could talk sense into him as someone who once loved him. My mother then escalated to contacting my close friends. My college roommate Daniel received a Facebook message about how I'd changed since becoming successful and was abandoning family values. My best friend Kevin got a LinkedIn message, LinkedIn, about my concerning behavior and asking if he'd noticed any personality changes that might indicate mental health issues. Each action was documented. Each voicemail saved in triplicate. Each text screenshot with full headers. I was building a file that would make any legal discovery team proud. Then came the masterstroke of manipulation. My mother group texted the entire family with a photo of Ashley crying, mascara running down her face, claiming I had refused to even consider helping my sister escape a dangerous situation. The message was accompanied by a long paragraph about how success had changed James, and how she never thought money would matter more to him than family. The photo was strategically cropped, but I noticed something in the reflection of Ashley's sunglasses on the table. They were in my mother's living room, not Ashley's apartment. I could see the distinctive wallpaper my mother had installed last year, and even part of the family portrait from Christmas. I enhanced the image, basic photo editing tools are wonderful, and confirmed it, they'd staged the photo at my mother's house. The metadata showed it was taken 3 days before the current crisis even supposedly began. I knew it was time to deploy my nuclear option. Update 2. The counterstrike. I spent an entire Saturday creating what I called the family manipulation files. It was a comprehensive Google Drive folder with military-grade organization containing 43 recorded phone calls showing clear manipulation tactics, with transcripts highlighting key moments. Screenshots of coordinated text messages with identical phrasing, suggesting a scripted campaign. A timeline showing messages from different family members arriving within minutes of each other. The Facebook messages to my ex-girlfriend and friends, demonstrating the reach of the manipulation. Recordings of Ashley admitting she felt safe before our mother got involved. Signed statements from Ashley's neighbors about the building's safety. Carol and Brian were particularly helpful. The photo evidence showing the crying photo was staged at my mother's house, with technical analysis. A timeline showing how the narrative evolved from apartment swap to life-threatening danger over 72 hours. Audio of my mother coaching Ashley on what to say during our calls. The building's crime statistics showing it was actually safer than the Seattle average. Screenshots of Ashley's social media showing her happy and comfortable in her apartment. The threatening voicemail from my Uncle Robert saying I'd regret this selfishness. A documentation of my mother's attempts to contact my employer. I organized everything chronologically with a summary document explaining the pattern of manipulation. Each piece of evidence was labeled, dated, and cross-referenced. It was devastating in its thoroughness, the kind of documentation that would hold up in court. But I wasn't done. I also created a second document, a draft Facebook post that included highlights from the evidence, tagged all the relevant family members, and included a link to the full file. The post began, "When Family Weaponizes Love, a documented case study in coordinated manipulation." On Sunday evening, I sent a message to the family group chat. I've become aware of a coordinated campaign to manipulate me into giving up my apartment. Over the past week, I have documented every conversation, every threat, and every lie told in this manufactured crisis. I have created a comprehensive file that clearly shows how this safety crisis was manufactured, orchestrated, and executed. The evidence includes recordings of mom coaching Ashley on what to say. A proof the crying photo was staged. Statements from Ashley's neighbors confirming the building's safety. A documentation of the scripted messages you all sent. Evidence of mom contacting my employer and personal friends. I am willing to keep this documentation private under the following conditions. 1. All harassment stops immediately. 2. No one contacts my employer, friends, or ex-girlfriends again. 3. Ashley publicly admits to the family that her apartment is safe. 4. Mom apologizes for the manipulation and orchestration. 5. No family member mentions the apartment swap again. 6. Everyone who participated admits they were given talking points by mom. You have 24 hours to agree to these terms. If the harassment continues, I will share this documentation on Facebook, where all of our mutual friends, mom's church group, her book club, and her professional network will see exactly how she operates. I will also share it with Ashley's college administration, as I have concerns about the pressure being placed on her. The draft post is already written and family members are already tagged. This is not a negotiation. This is a consequence of your collective actions. The family chat exploded instantly. Aunt Linda called me cruel and manipulative. Uncle Robert said I was tearing the family apart and threatened to disown me. Cousin Michael accused me of blackmail and said he was calling the police. He didn't. Cousin Jennifer said I'd gone too far and that families work things out privately. But my mother, she went completely silent. 20 minutes later, she called me. This time, her voice was different, quiet, almost frightened, lacking its usual commanding tone. James, you wouldn't really share those recordings, would you? Why not, Mom? If you've done nothing wrong, what's the problem? You were ready to tell everyone I'm a terrible brother. Why can't I tell them what actually happened? It would be, people wouldn't understand. Context matters. Things said in private sound different when shared publicly. Then provide context. Call everyone right now and explain that Ashley is actually safe, that you exaggerated the danger, and that the apartment swap was your idea, not hers. I can't do that. It would make me look manipulative, controlling, like someone who weaponizes family against each other. She was quiet for a long moment. What you're doing is cruel, James. I'm your mother. What I'm doing is protecting myself from manipulation. You weaponized the entire family against me. You contacted my employer. You tried to destroy my reputation. You reached out to my ex-girlfriend, Mom. All because you decided Ashley deserved my apartment more than I did. She's your sister. She's a young woman alone in the city. And I'm your son. When did that stop mattering? When did I become just a resource to be redistributed to Ashley? That's not. I don't think of you as a resource. Your actions say otherwise. You've made it clear that my years of hard work mean nothing if Ashley wants what I have. The call ended there. But within hours, things started changing dramatically. The family harassment stopped abruptly, like someone had flipped a switch. Ashley texted me a simple, "I'm sorry." Uncle Robert sent a message saying he was stepping back from family drama. Aunt Linda suddenly remembered she had too much on her plate to get involved. My mother, however, wasn't ready to give up entirely. Update 3. The escalation and resolution. 2 days after my ultimatum, my mother attempted a different approach. She showed up at my office building during lunch. Security called up to notify me I had a visitor. I came down but didn't invite her beyond the lobby, making sure we stayed in full view of the security cameras. "We need to talk," she said, her face a mask of controlled anger. "We can talk right here," I replied, pulling out my phone. "And I'm recording this conversation." Her face flushed. "You can't just threaten your family with exposure. That's not how family works. It's extortion. Neither is organized manipulation, but here we are. And it's not extortion. I'm not asking for money or any benefit. I'm asking to be left alone. I'm asking for the harassment to stop. Any lawyer would tell you that sharing true information about someone's behavior isn't extortion, it's free speech." She pulled out her phone and showed me a text conversation with someone named David, apparently a lawyer friend. "He says what you're doing could be considered extortion." I actually laughed. "Mom, your lawyer friend is either imaginary or incompetent. Extortion requires threatening someone to obtain money or property. I'm threatening to share truthful information unless you stop harassing me. That's self-defense, not extortion. Plus, truth is an absolute defense to defamation claims. Would you like me to share my documentation with your lawyer friend? I'm sure he'd find it interesting. You're going to destroy our family's reputation." "No, you did that when you decided to orchestrate this campaign. I'm just considering whether to make it public. You created this situation, Mom. Every single step." She tried a different tactic, tears. But after years of seeing her deploy tactical crying, I was immune. The tears appeared too quickly, stopped too suddenly when they weren't working. "Mom, you have 18 hours left. Either the harassment stops completely, or everything goes public. Your choice." That evening, I received a text from Ashley that changed everything. It was longer than her usual messages, and felt genuine. No emoji, no drama, just words. "James, I need you to know the truth. Mom has been pressuring me for weeks about your apartment. She said if I could get you to switch with me, she'd pay my tuition for the rest of college. She wrote out what I should say, made me practice the crying, even suggested I make up the story about being followed. I didn't want to do it, but the tuition thing. I'm $30,000 in debt already and scared of graduating with more. I'm sorry. I actually like my apartment. The neighbors are nice and it's close to campus. It's perfect for me. I never felt unsafe until Mom convinced me I should. She kept saying I was in danger until I started believing it. I'm going to tell her I won't be part of this anymore." I screenshot the message immediately, adding it to my collection. Then I called Ashley. "Ash, I appreciate your honesty. But you need to understand something. Mom's financial support always comes with strings. Always. I know that now. She's already talking about what I'll owe her after graduation. Get everything in writing if she offers to pay. Everything. And maybe consider that debt is better than decades of manipulation." The next morning, with 3 hours left on my deadline, my mother sent a message to the family group chat. "I want to apologize for the recent drama regarding the apartment situation. I overreacted to Ashley's living situation and created unnecessary conflict. Ashley has assured me she feels safe in her apartment, and I was wrong to involve everyone in what should have been a private conversation. I apologized to James especially for the pressure I put on him. It was strategic, minimizing her actions as overreacting rather than admitting to manipulation, but it met my requirements. The harassment stopped immediately. Update 4. The aftermath. 1 month later. The family dynamics shifted dramatically after what everyone started calling the apartment incident, though no one spoke about it directly. Thanksgiving was awkward but peaceful. My mother treated me with a cold correctness, never quite meeting my eyes, speaking to me only when necessary. Other family members seemed almost afraid to engage with me beyond surface pleasantries. Conversations would stop when I entered rooms, then restart with forced cheerfulness about safe topics like weather or sports. Ashley and I actually grew closer. Free from our mother's manipulation, she confessed how exhausting it had been to maintain the performance. She'd never wanted my apartment. She actually loved being in a more artistic, diverse neighborhood. The coffee shops, the street art, the community gardens, it was everything she'd wanted from city living. We started having coffee once a week, building an authentic relationship without our mother's interference. I actually feel safer in my neighborhood than I would in yours, she admitted one afternoon. Your building is so isolated, so corporate. My neighbors look out for each other. The most interesting development came from an unexpected source. My Aunt Linda called me privately. James, I owe you an apology. After everything settled, I started thinking about other times Patricia had gotten the family involved in personal disputes. There's a pattern I hadn't seen before. She went on to describe 3 other incidents over the years where my mother had weaponized family opinion to get her way. When cousin Stephanie wouldn't let Mom plan her entire wedding, suddenly the family was concerned about Stephanie's mental state and control issues. When my uncle Christopher wouldn't lend Mom money for her kitchen renovation, the family heard about his selfishness and forgetting where he came from. Each time, the target had eventually capitulated under the pressure. You're the first one who fought back effectively, Linda said. I think it shocked her. She's used to controlling the narrative. Your documentation thing was genius. She can't spin it when you have recordings. I learned something valuable from that conversation. My mother's behavior wasn't new. I had just been the first to document it comprehensively and threaten real consequences. Update 5. 3 months later, the new normal. As I write this final update, it's been 3 months since the confrontation. The changes in my family dynamics have solidified into a new normal that's actually healthier than before, though it took time to get here. Ashley found a better apartment on her own, still affordable but in a nicer area, with 2 roommates from her college program. She signed the lease without telling our mother until after it was done. When Mom started to object, Ashley simply said, I don't want another apartment incident, and the conversation ended there. The new place is actually in a converted artist loft, and Ashley loves the exposed brick and large windows. She's even started a small herb garden on the fire escape. My relationship with my mother has evolved into something I call documented détente. She's unfailingly polite but careful. Every interaction feels like she's aware of being potentially recorded. She's right, I still document everything. She no longer attempts manipulation, at least not with me. When she starts to fall into old patterns, I simply take out my phone and place it on the table. She stops immediately. The extended family treats me differently too. There's a wariness, but also a respect. Cousin Michael recently told me at a family barbecue, we all know not to mess with you now. You came prepared to that fight in a way Patricia never expected. It's actually kind of badass. Even Uncle Robert, who'd been the most aggressive in his messages, pulled me aside at that same gathering. Look, James, I didn't know Patricia had orchestrated all that. She made it sound like Ashley was in real danger. I should have asked more questions. The most satisfying moment came last week. My mother called to ask if I could help with a technical issue on her computer. The conversation was normal, even pleasant. We discussed the weather, her garden, my recent promotion. At the end, she said something that stunned me. James, I want you to know. I've been seeing a therapist. The apartment situation made me realize some things about how I handle family relationships. I'm working on it. I didn't know how to respond initially, so I took a breath and simply said, That's good, Mom. I hope it helps. The therapist asked about the recordings. She said it was a wake-up call I needed. I've been controlling my children's lives for too long. What else has she said? That I use the family as a weapon. That I create crises to maintain control. That I see my children as extensions of myself rather than individuals. She paused. She's right. That's a big realization, Mom. Would you delete those files? The recordings and screenshots? It's hard knowing they exist. I thought about it for a moment. No, Mom. They're insurance. But I promise they'll never see daylight as long as the manipulation doesn't return. She sighed. I suppose that's fair. The therapist said you had every right to protect yourself. I'm glad you're getting help, Mom. Really. And I meant it. The threat of exposure had accomplished what years of arguments never could. It had forced my mother to confront her behavior and seek professional help. Final reflection. Looking back, I realized this was never really about the apartment. It was about power, control, and the toxic assumption that family can treat you however they want without consequences. My mother had spent decades perfecting her manipulation tactics, rallying flying monkeys to pressure her targets into submission. She'd created an entire family culture where her word was law and disagreement was betrayal. What she didn't account for was that her software engineer son would approach the situation like debugging bad code, methodically documenting each error, creating reproducible test cases, and implementing a permanent fix. The same skills that made me successful in tech became my tools for combating familial manipulation. The recordings and screenshots weren't just evidence, they were a mirror, forcing my family to see their behavior clearly for the first time. The threat of public exposure wasn't cruel, it was the only accountability they'd ever faced. For the first time, there would be consequences for their actions that my mother couldn't control or spin. I still have the files, backed up in 3 different cloud services and on 2 physical drives. Every few weeks, I review them, partly to remind myself I wasn't imagining things, partly as a warning to stay vigilant. The manipulation may have stopped, but the capacity for it remains. My mother's therapy is promising, but decades of behavior don't change overnight. Ashley and I have developed a close relationship built on honesty rather than manipulation. We have a running joke now. Whenever our mother starts to display old behaviors, one of us will casually mention documentation in conversation. It's become our safe word, our subtle reminder that we're watching, we're recording, and we won't be victims again. Last week, Ashley told me something that made everything worth it. You taught me that I don't have to accept being manipulated just because it's family doing it. That's a lesson I'll carry forever. The apartment swap demand was the best thing that could have happened to our family, not because it succeeded, but because its failure exposed the dysfunction we'd all been ignoring. Sometimes, the only way to stop a bully is to show them you've been keeping receipts. My name is James, I'm 26 years old, and I successfully defended my home against a coordinated family manipulation campaign by threatening to expose their tactics to the world. I regret nothing except not starting the documentation sooner. If I'd known earlier what I know now, I could have saved myself years of subtle manipulation and guilt trips. To anyone facing similar family manipulation, document everything. Set boundaries. Be prepared to enforce consequences. And remember, family doesn't mean accepting abuse. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is show them their behavior has consequences. Real love doesn't require manipulation. Real family doesn't require coordinated attacks. The view from my apartment is still spectacular. Every morning, I drink my coffee while watching the sunrise over the water, and I think about how differently this could have ended if I'd given in. And it will remain mine, not because I'm selfish, but because I've earned it, and because standing up to manipulation is never wrong, no matter who's doing the manipulating. My apartment is more than just a nice place to live now. It's a symbol of boundaries held, manipulation rejected, and the power of documentation in the face of gaslighting. Every time I look out at that view, I'm reminded that I chose my own well-being over family dysfunction, and that choice led to healthier relationships with everyone involved. The family will gather for Christmas next month. There will be careful conversations and documented interactions. My mother will be polite and distant. Ashley and I will exchange knowing looks. The rest of the family will treat me with cautious respect. And somewhere, in multiple secure locations, the files will wait, never needed, I hope, but ready if the old patterns return. Because now they know, I keep receipts. And I'm not afraid to use them. If you're dealing with family manipulation, remember, documentation is protection. Boundaries are healthy. And sometimes, the threat of accountability is the only thing that creates change. You're not obligated to suffer because someone shares your DNA.